Good evening. It's August 5th on the Alan Osborne Show, and today we're going to talk about customary use and its history. And the reason that's important is we're having an election. There's a lot of bullshit being thrown around out there. The first bullshit I want to talk about is Mike Atkinson's attempted retaliation on Aaron Murray. Mike's mentor, Graham Fountain, who was employed by Mike, tried to get Murray fired at the college, and Murray's had to file a complaint. Graham physically told Murray that he didn't have permission to run for sheriff in Walton County without coming to see this man in Okaloosa County. Other updates are Davie County money is flooding into the sheriff, Tony Anderson, Trey Nick, Boots McCormick, and Chuck Wilder's campaign. Why is Davie County so intent on keeping 3 commissioners in their pocket and the sheriff? Why does Davie County need the sheriff and those kind of people in? Why do these developers need to have a sheriff? Anyway, so back to CU. Customary use. Boy, it's a hot topic. It shouldn't be for this election because we've got much bigger fish to fry, like corruption, and the corruption is kin to CU. Now, why can Alan talk about CU different from everybody else? Well, first of all, I was here before customary use was an issue. I was also here before the comp plan. Okay, so that's how I'm going to enter CU, and I'm going to talk about who had what roles in it, to include the sheriff, the planning department, and the BCC. And then we'll talk about what really motivated CU and what the issue really is, okay? All right. In the beginning, there was South Walton, and it was broke as hell. As old people told me one time, Alan, that property down there in the south end wasn't worth nothing. You couldn't do nothing with it, and it wouldn't even grow soybeans. And so, for 100 years, South Walton sat with Sleepy Little Grayton and other small coastal with beach homes and coastal homes that people came to with no air conditioning that got the breeze off the Gulf. But Walton County began to grow, and Walton County was backwards. Walton County did not want to adopt a comprehensive plan, and in fact, by the mid-90s, Walton County was under so much pressure because it had no plan, and South Walton, we all know, is not a city. So, they got a lot of pressure, okay? They got a lot of pressure, and they didn't make it on time, so the state was stepping in, and they had to adopt a comprehensive plan. Now, how do I know? I went to those meetings back in the mid-90s, and then I'm in the record there, and in 1996, we adopted a comprehensive plan. Alan, there people go, what the hell does this matter, Alan? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because the comprehensive plan took into account all these things. How much infrastructure we had, how we were developed up to that point, because we already had Seaside and other communities down 30A. It just didn't look the same at all. In fact, you could ride your Harley without fear of overheating or stopping too much down 30A back when I lived just north of 30A in those days. So we adopted a comprehensive plan, and here's the deal. We adopted a plan, and we knew what our resources was because we just went through the process of evaluating that with state agencies. And so we didn't have a perfect plan, but the comp plan adopted in 1996 was a pretty good one because it established that we only had so much beach, so much road, so much non-wetland, and we could only handle so much based on ours. And we already knew most of 98 after Sandestin back in those days, it was 2-lane. Everybody that lives here remembers that. I mean, it was so sleepy you couldn't believe it. But the 4-lane was already approved, and we knew that. And eventually, we knew 331 Bridge would be 4-lane. So, but here's what we also knew, and nobody wants to accept this, that although it's not written in there, in the small print at the bottom it says, P.S. I'm not going to create any more land on that island. Love, God. Okay? Because what we had is what we had. And that's still what we got. And herein lies the great con. Walton County struggled, and this was the future of the Golden Goose. The comprehensive plan and some of the things we adopted were great because they were put in place to preserve Walton from becoming what Destin and Panama City were on both sides of it. We were different. We were going to be less than 50 foot, except for the stuff that was already built and the DRIs like Sandestin. We had all these rules, and we had lots of area that was, listen to this, believe it or not, it was conservation residential. And all those huge tracts of conservation residential. But think about this. Our future land use map, also known as a FLUM in Walton County, it was based on what our infrastructure could hold. And believe it or not, we haven't made any more beach. In fact, Walton County took steps when it should have been buying beach or making developments dedicate public beach, but they sat there and let them deed it as private beach. Now, not all of it was quiet title, and I know there's some bullshit that happened out there in a few instances, but I'm telling you, what Walton County happened, the reason we have a CU issue is greed and corruption. Because the planning department and code and stuff, that comprehensive plan was just a place to shift from. It meant nothing, and they planned on enforcing it. How do we know? We've had like 4,000 changes. Now, back in the 2000s, there happened to be a volleyball thing that brought CU to the surface. Because look, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, we didn't have too many people trying to get on the beach, and we didn't have all these fights. Why? Because all those areas that are now short-term rentals, they weren't supposed to be short-term rentals. So we never planned. That was supposed to be retired homes and permanent homes, for real people like non-tourists. It was supposed to be, most of it was supposed to be 2 homes per acre, and some places there now have 20 units per acre. In those same former conservation residential, we didn't enforce drainage standards. We didn't look ahead in the parking, and we let developers have exceptions and changes to land uses that there was no way to add infrastructure, as I said, unless I wasn't looking. No, God hadn't built any more land on this island since the 90s, and the beach is of varying width, and let's get to that. This is a good shot of our beach. We don't have, our comp plan took into the fact in its beach studies back in the 90s that we weren't the Outer Banks of North Carolina with 4-mile wide beaches. We'd have a few wider places on our beaches, but traditionally our beaches can only handle so much. Now, Larry Jones, the former county administrator, in a deposition in the Edgewater thing, he knew CU was coming because back in the day, Larry, as a commissioner, and as the county administrator, what happened is greed took over, and people wanted to make some insider money on these land use changes, and they did things that were a short-term gain for the tax rolls and a long-term loss for the citizens. And even after that, when they realized it had exploded too far, and it was boiling to a point where we were made so many short-term rentals that there was no way the beach could handle it, and a war was about to be created, instead of putting a moratorium and the brakes on it, they created the issue of CU, because as long as they could tell the public that we're going to get the beaches back, when, as Tony Anderson said, a judge said we were going to lose, but we spent $4.5 million of taxpayers' money so we could leave the hope alive that more beach was coming. Well, hell, there's oceanfront property in Paxton for sale, if you believe that. So while we were all in court fighting this out, they were busy making more land use changes and more short-term rentals. But say, Alan, well, Tony says we have to let them. Well, what if we told a developer, anything above a minor development, if you want to build a major development, we don't have the infrastructure for you to have any short-term rentals. None. And if you want those, like everybody else, well, we don't have it for you. You're going to have to buy a beach house and deed it to your development and rip it down and make some parking and beach access. And then we're going to have to put conditions on it, because I don't know, BCC, God's not planning on showing up and creating more land or making wetlands into dry lands. Of course, they do that around here all the time and then dump it into the bay. We've had a failure of leadership, and CU has been the great scam. I was a beach ride. I don't own any access to any beach in Walton County. Okay, I'll just say that up front. But I was a beach rights person until I watched the county, under my own eyes at these meetings, ignore its plan. And folks, any plan you don't follow is not going to work. Don't follow your education plan and see if you graduate college. Don't have a financial plan and see if you end up wealthy. You know, don't follow any plans at all. Join the military and go to war without a plan. Do you think that's going to work out well? And neither does a plan that we adopted, and the planning, and Matt Carpenter and Tony Anderson and Nick and Boots and all of them, they're not stopping it. And they don't need to go back in office. Chuck Wilder doesn't have a clue what to do. He's never been to any meeting. It's a DNA meeting. But why aren't the commissioners making a moratorium on just short-term rentals due to no roads, no infrastructure? Why aren't we making developers bring land for schools and ball fields as part of their business model, as they want exceptions to the land use changes? We're just not doing this smart, and CU was the great scam. Tony and them all knew it, but look how many land use changes happened while we were all staring at the beach. They were building more for more people that don't have anywhere to get to the beach. And does that pass the smell test? See, the CU was the great scam, short-term gains and long-term losses for the public. The elected and the connected and the developers, they got a massive short-term gain from changing land that was conservation residential and minting money by making it VMU and PUDs out of it, that it was never intended to be in the plan. And who did that? The guy who lost his real estate license and is still our planning director. Matt Carpenter recommended a lot of that. And who approved it? 8 years of it, Tony Anderson. Never understood CU and still doesn't, and he's given up your rights. Listen, CU is way above the BCC and shouldn't be an issue except for this. The commissioners need to buy as much beachfront and build vertical parking as they can with what they got. And they should have a policy that we don't pay over appraised value without a complete majority vote and a public hearing. We don't do that, but we've done it over and over. We paid over $4 million over appraisal for a beach property in the great CU scam. I hope that's a synopsis of what CU is and isn't. See, because while they were building a war between the beachfront owners, who most of them moved in here unaware, completely, all these people didn't move down here with the intent of taking over the beach. They thought when they bought these beach properties that a county would follow a comprehensive plan, but they didn't. They intentionally overloaded it till they created a war between the states, the North versus the South. Meanwhile, the people who made all the money laughed all the way to the bank at our expense. Well, you can fix that August 20th. It's time to get the corruption quartet of Atkinson, Nick, Anderson, and Glidewell, and surely not Chuck. Don't even let him in. We need the corruption quartet out. And come on, folks, it's only about 15 days to the election. It's time for the dream team: Murray, Morano, Drake, and Curry. We can have a change in the way we look at and manage Walton County. We can make sure that we don't collapse our market and squander the golden goose. We can have realistic expectations to build better beach access for those, and to hold those not following the ordinances and making long-term costs for our kids and grandkids. It's time to hold those people responsible. So I hope that's a history of the CU, of the greed and the great scam, because here's the sheriff's role in it. Do you notice Walton County is at the center of it? So I told you the BCC role. Here's the sheriff's role. Okaloosa County, they drew a line in the sand and they called it like it was. Bay County too. Only here did the sheriff become a politician and put himself squarely in the middle of CU, the legislature, and everywhere else. Larry Ashley didn't do that, and neither did Panama City. And they haven't had the contentious war that we have had in Walton County. And the difference has been the leadership of Ashley, and I forgot the guy at the Panama City. Sorry, I got a script. And then we had Fatkinson. He was out there in the middle of it saying what he would and wouldn't enforce. He was becoming judge and jury in a land issue where he had no skin in the game. But notice who the contributors are for Atkinson: developers and people who profited from the CU war. And that's CU in a nutshell. The sheriff, those bad commissioners, and the planning department drove us right to this. And the corrupt boards of their selectees, who are all in the career fields of making money off development, they weren't your protection. Look with your eyes open and think about it and vote with your hearts. Actions speak louder than words, and the actions of the corrupt quartet have spoken loudly. They've caused us a lot of problems, but we can fix it. Surely we can do better than this, and my faith lies within that dream team of Murray, Morano, Drake, and Curry on August 20th. Till next time, you can't make this shit up, but I hope I explained a few things to you on the Alan Osborne Show. I'll see you tomorrow.